human form from the natural reptilian form just takes over. And it's sort of like, for the most part, to make a long story short on that, is that the two alien species that were right before they started fighting on Earth, they wanted to make a peaceful race together. So they actually mixed, the genetics of the reptilians and the Lyrians, and they mixed it so there could be sort of ambassadors for each side since they were kind of fighting all the time. Now, this is a story that we're a little... So anyways, and that basically from there we were created, or sort of. It could be during the Sumerian times. It's all speculation. I mean, I'm just kind of reading.
Like you were saying, like we were created by them to look like them? Right.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. In a way, we are half reptilian and half human, or Lyrian.
I agree with you, actually.
So that's where the shape-shifting would come in, though, and they have to have the blood if they want to look like humans. But, if the blood is going to give them the DNA of... It sounds like it's just a hoaxy little cheesy movie, but if there's a lot of, I guess, government officials that supposedly are, educating
well, that's
people.
Interesting that you say that, because I have some scripture that kind of supports that. Me and Doctor, we was talking a while back about how the verse in the Bible says, and God, that we know is energy, God is just energy, and that says, and God said, let us make man, let us make man in our own image. Okay, everybody knows that it was the angels, and I hate that word, aliens. It's the let us, who's us, is the aliens.
Oh, and of course, yes, and God's original, a lot of it is plural, so it's like you said, our own image. But
exactly,
yes,
so we were made to look like them, and I've studied a little bit from what I've gathered just by doing my cross-referencing and think that even, okay, now let's look at Islam theology, which is important to understand this. In Islam, they believe that Satan is what they call as a jinn. He's not a messenger, and that's true because Satan, according to Ezekiel chapter 28, is not an angel because angel means messenger. Satan is a cherub, Ezekiel 28, and cherubs don't deliver messages. And they also say in Muslim theology or Islam theology that Satan is a reptilian. So that all of that there supports, that we were created to look like them, and it goes to support what you were saying, what you were telling us. See.
So you're saying Satan is reptilian? In which?
Pardon me?
Where do we find that the reference to Satan being reptilian?
That's in
Islam
theology.
They actually say that. Yeah, and reptilians, some of them do have horns, and they have the full setup of what the typical devil is supposed to look like.
Yeah,
so,
even in...
what's even the like the reference on that, Benny?
Do what now? It's in the Quran, more about
Satan being reptilian. I just wanted to check it out.
Oh, it's in the Quran.
No, in any biblical citation.
Oh, I'm not real sure about a biblical citation. Now, if you look in Ezekiel chapter 28, you can read about Satan not being an angel. It actually tells you that he's a cherub, that he's not an angel.
Reptilian.
Yeah, and then over in, to go deeper, like in Islam, if you look in the Quran, they don't use the word angel at all. They use the word jinn, which is another word that pretty much means aliens, is what jinn means. It's just another word that means aliens. And they say that that Satan is reptilian. And they even believe in Islam, what I've learned from some of my Muslim friends, that the Antichrist is going to be a shape-shifting reptilian.
Right. Oh, yeah, that's true. And that would be, reptilians, they say could be in power, with government or whatever you want to call it, so there's always that, yeah. And that's what I'm saying. Okay, look at the 50% human, 50% basically reptilian. It's supposed to have, obviously the DNA would weigh more in the reptilian because humans are supposed to be half sort of reptilian so that you get more, of the reptilian side. So that's where they need sort of have the DNA to shapeshift for the most part, but also can, ingest, I guess you want to call it, energy from humans, like the emotions. So it's almost kind of like it's kind of up in, it sounds bizarre as it is, you know.
Right. Okay, now I want to talk about something here, because we're talking about vampires. I always believe that we advocates of the occult need to address certain challenges. And in 2006, a professor at the Central University of Florida, Costas Fumo, had argued that vampires cannot exist for the following reason: that if you start off in 1600 with one vampire, when there are an estimated 537 million humans, and of course that was a rough figure, they didn't have clear-cut censuses then, that if the vampire each vampire brought across just one victim, then after the first month you'd have 2 vampires, after 12 months 4,096, after 17 months 131,072, and these numbers really jump up. You start off with this one vampire, but now everyone's taking in one victim per month. After month 20, you'd have 1,048,568 vampires. And finally, by month 24, 15,777,088 vampires. And by the 29th month, about 2.5 years, you'd have that 536,866,816. In other words, after 2.5 years, if you had just one vampire to start with, and every vampire brought across everyone he bit, the whole world would be filled with vampires, and of course they'd have no one to take the blood from, kill each other off, and that's his argument. They do not exist. And he was very generous because he said they just bit one person a month. If it was one a week, it would be only 29 weeks for that to occur, and if it was nightly, only 29 days. My argument is this, that vampires are intelligent creatures, and they do not bring everyone across that they bite. There are four results. One, a victim can be a one-time victim and no long-lasting effects. Second, they can be a recurring victim. The third, they can die. Or the fourth, they can be brought across. But vampires would not want to bring in all that competition. And they may not even have, if they exist, may not have the ability to bring across another person as a vampire. So I think his logic was excellent, but I do not accept it. And I point out, if you remember the TV series Forever Night about a vampire detective in Toronto, either of you had seen that? First it was on CBS and then the Sci-Fi channel. Does that ring a bell? He's a vampire, and he was in love with the autopsy surgeon. Well,
I know what you're talking about.
After he had been brought across his first wife, his original wife, he tried to bring her across and she died. Then in the final episode, which was called appropriately Final Night, he tried to bring across the autopsy surgeon, but she died. And he was so heartbroken, he had his mentor, who had brought him across, stake him so he could join her in the afterlife. A very dramatic ending to that series. But I think that points out that vampires, even if they wanted to bring someone across, might not be able to. So that's why we don't have everyone walking around as a vampire, but why I believe they could still have some individuals who are actual vampires. I think it's within the realm of feasibility.
Exactly. And here's one important fact that, or it's an important fact, that vampires, they don't really sparkle in the sunlight. So, are you with me, Erica?
Yeah, I haven't heard that they ever sparkled, so this is interesting.
Because the Twilight movies, they touch on some truth about vampires, the Twilight movies, but there's a lot of mistruth. There's a lot of things that's not true. They portray vampires normally are dark type, creatures. I mean, very beautiful, yes, but like in Twilight, the vampires, and they're in the sunlight, they sparkle, and that's kind of like having skulls shoot rainbows out of their eyes. As cool as that is, but vampires don't really sparkle in the sunlight. I guess according to the legend that they can't be in the sunlight.
Right. Well, I see your point there. That's silly, but yeah.
And
if they were in the sun, then.
Now, the first major vampire movie was 1922's Silent Nosferatu with Max Schreck. A couple of facts about that. They based it on Bram Stoker's Dracula, but they changed the name to Count Orlok for the vampire because they didn't want to pay any royalties. but it still went to court, and the movie was held up a year, and they ultimately had to pay the penalties before they could air the movie. But if you see this, such as on TCM, the very end, Nosferatu has bitten the heroine on the neck, and then suddenly he sees daylight, and he's dissolved by the sunlight coming through the window. But we clearly see his reflection in the mirror beside the victim's bed, and that, of course, is a violation of vampiric lore, and that was in that first main movie. Then we fast forward to 1948 with Bela Lugosi in Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, in which Lugosi was playing Dracula. And, of course, this is a Universal film. Universal made the first one in 1931 with the stress on the fact that vampires cast no reflection in the light. But in the movie in 1948, Bela is seen biting this female doctor in the neck because she's refused to put Costello's brain into the body of the Frankenstein monster. And again, we clearly see Bela's reflection in the mirror as he bites her. And I don't know if they realized that would happen. I don't know how they could have missed that, but that was a gross error by Universal, considering the stress they placed on no vampiric reflections in the 1931 film. And I just want to point out one more thing. You do know that Christopher Lee played Dracula in The Horror of Dracula, 1958. Excellent film. In the very end of that film, Peter Cushing as Van Helsing held up a cross, and he was exposed to the sunlight, and he dissolved absolutely into dust. And my thought was it was a superb ending to destroy the vampire, but it made for a difficult sequel if they were going to bring him back. I don't know if Hammer had planned on bringing him back, because it wasn't 8 years until 8 years later, 1966, when they made the sequel, Dracula, Prince of Darkness. But I do commend them because they embraced that ending where Dracula had turned to dust. A supposed servant gathered together all the dust from Dracula and put it in a pot, and then found a victim, and the victim was turned upside down. The victim's blood resurrected Dracula from his dust. So some couple of interesting treatments of the vampire legend. Do you remember seeing either of those films? Horror of Dracula or the Dracula, Prince of Darkness from Hammer? They've been on TV many times.
Yeah, I saw the second one, yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was excellent.
Can I ask you, did you say that...
Speak.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, well, basically, did you say Dracula originally or whatever came from Ireland? Is that...
No, Bram Stoker, the author of Dracula, was born in Ireland.
Okay, because I just wanted to say there is an Irish-Scottish connection with reptilians as well. So that's interesting there.
What is that connection?
The connection is the bloodline, something that they follow with the bloodlines that are, I don't know if it's more pure, but, it just has to do with there's dragons and all the different castles and all the, how there's the folklore there. I don't know. It's almost somehow it stems from there. So it's just an interesting point.
Well, we have 20 seconds left.
Okay,
Doctor,
20 seconds. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, may the power of the cosmos be with you, and have a happy Halloween. Yes, yes, yes.